Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. Got a special edition of the Flagship Podcast for you today. I am Chip Brown of Horns 24/7, joined as always by Taylor Estes, the managing editor and fearless leader of Horns 24/7. Taylor, hope you had a great Christmas. We are now headed toward the new year. How's everything going?
Yeah, everything's good. Christmas was good. It was my first Christmas I've spent in Texas, so that was a first here. I usually, for the last 15 years, been flying out to see my family in California for Christmas. This year, I decided, you know what? I'm going to actually celebrate it at home for once. So it was really good. How was yours, Chip?
It was good. It was good. Family and friends, and I think people got what they wanted under the tree, and people are happy. And when you get to the end of the year, Taylor, you sort of reflect. We kind of, you know, we look back before we look forward, right?
Mm.
Before
Yes.
we lay out those resolutions to eat better and exercise and all those things that we'll probably give up on halfway through January. But right now, we look back. And so on today's episode of the Flagship Podcast, we look back on 2021 with some awards.
Yep,
We have
some
awards.
end of the
Red
season,
carpet.
end of the year. Yep, exactly. We didn't come up with a very clever name though, Chip. We probably should have. Chip and I were going through this. We were talking on the phone for a while trying to figure out our awards, but we never thought of a name for our awards. So end of year
I mean, we
flag.
could, since we're Horns 24/7, we could call them the Hornies, but that's
Mm,
probably not, you know.
yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about saying that. So
So we'll
we'll just stay with
just
awards.
Yeah,
Let's
well,
do that.
listen, if you, the listener, come up with some ideas for names for these awards, great. But we will get on to the actual awards because we got 12 of them, and we're gonna lay them out for you right now. Taylor, you want to lead us off?
I will. So, Chip, I think we have to start, especially with the timing of when this went down. But our first award for the end of 2021 is the most expensive New Year's party in Texas history award. And this one goes out to Chris Del Conte, Kevin L. Tife, and Jay Hartzell, coming up with $77.8 million to replace the UT football staff and hire Steve Sarkisian and his guys. And we have to lead with that. I mean, that happened what 2 days into 2021, and so this was a big deal.
Yeah, this was January 2nd. Um, it came down. Tom Herman was being let go, and Steve Sarkisian brought in. Tom Herman, $15 million buyout. His staff, another 6.6 million to buy them out. And then you bring in Steve Sarkisian at 34.2 million, and his coaching staff at over 20 million. And what a crazy season. I mean, there's always anticipation, excitement. Of course, Steve Sarkisian's coming off the national championship at Alabama, where he's dialing up plays to Devontae Smith to the tune of you know 12 catches, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns in a half as Alabama destroyed Ohio State. Um, and then obviously growing pains in year one. You get the 4-1 start. There's excitement, a 28-7 lead against Oklahoma, and then it just turned into the most bizarre, erratic season, the longest losing streak in a season since 1956, 6 straight losses, but had double-digit leads in the third quarter on the three best teams in the Big 12: Baylor, Oklahoma State, and OU. So some things to get excited about, and we'll get to some more of the individuals, who fans should be excited about going into next year. But no doubt about it, what a New Year's party to start the year for Texas football. Expensive, but each fan listening to this show can decide if it was worth the $77.8 million. But it's going to take time,
Yeah,
obviously. take time. So,
Probably it's a little too early to say if it's, excited or not on this one, right, Chip? I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be excited. I think if you're a Texas fan, and the way that the football program ended the year with the signing class, that alone shows that these coaches may be worth giving a little bit of time to, get some of the wrinkles ironed out and instill their culture. But this was a huge change. And I'll never forget the day it went down. And well, I guess the 24 hours, 48 hours leading up to this going down. It was wild. Chip's going to have to write a book about it, I think, one of these days.
oh my lord.
But
Yeah, it was wild, and we'll continue to document that story, as we said, in these awards even.
Mhm.
Taylor, our second award, is the Best First Impression Award, given to the Texas women's basketball team and first-year coach Vic Schaefer for reaching the Elite Eight in year one. And this was, they played Oklahoma, a middle of the pack Oklahoma team, in February at home. They were up by 11 points with 4 minutes to go, and they ended up losing that game in overtime. And Vic Schaefer told me, I didn't even know at that point if we had an NCAA tournament team, because they really were dependent on six players. Now, one of them was All-American Charlie Collier, who's 6'5", ended up going number one in the WNBA draft, but teams were game planning to take her away. So you had this group of six, Celeste Taylor, Joanne Allen Taylor, and Audrey Warren, the human, living, breathing charging fouls. I mean, she takes charges like nobody's business. Um, and then Lauren Ebo. I mean, it was this ragtag group, but they came together in March. Taylor, they got into the NCAA tournament, which was being played in San Antonio because of COVID, which played to the Longhorns' benefit, and they took down number 3 seeded UCLA, a bigger, deeper UCLA team, and then took down the highest scoring team in the NCAA tournament, Maryland, the number 2 seed, which had been averaging over 80 points per game, held them to 61, and reached the Elite Eight. And it was so improbable. And Vic Schaefer said that it meant more to him than, any other season. And he's reached the national championship game twice when he was at Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge, solid first impression, I guess you could say, because it kind of had the ups and the downs. But the saying in college football is people remember November, and I don't think this saying in basketball, but people, what matters is when you get hot. And a lot of times, if the teams that can get hot right before the NCAA tournament, that carries over, and that's exactly what happened to Texas women's basketball. It's a good point that it shows defense comes through and when it matters most a lot of times. And as you mentioned, being able to not only take down the highest scoring team in Maryland, but holding them to 61 points in the Sweet 16 last year, that was really impressive. Obviously the Elite Eight matchup was a little bit different against number 1 seed South Carolina, but still, for that to happen in year one, it's probably not very high probability that that's going to happen, but it did for Texas. So kudos to Texas women's basketball and Vic Schaefer to getting off to a solid start there. My next one, Chip, it's another basketball one, but it's going to be a different tune. The Home Run Hire Award, and that goes to Chris Del Conte for swiping Chris Beard away from Texas Tech. And I think, honestly, my favorite part about this award is he took, one of the hottest names in college basketball and got him to come to Texas at McDonald's. And that to me is pretty awesome. I mean, it's got to be like a sub award for, the cheapest breakfast date in the history of college athletics, potentially for a coaching hire change. But this was Home Run Hire Award. I think it's going to pay off in the long run for Texas basketball.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Self told me a funny story. I mean, he's known Chris Beard since Beard was at Seminole Junior College, helping Bill Self get players when Bill Self was the coach at Tulsa. And and so when Beard made it into the NCAA tournament and upset Purdue when he was at UALR, University of Arkansas Little Rock, he sent Bill Self was like, most coaches would take their team out to the best steak dinner they could find. And
Mhm.
he said, Beard sent me a picture of him and his team at Whataburger. And that's Chris Beard. I mean, he takes his job seriously. He does not take himself seriously. One press conference, he was talking about how he made it through Texas and got his degree thanks to Cliff Notes, and was like, does anyone know what Cliff Notes are anymore?
Yeah. It's called
Yellow
the
and
internet
black.
now, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was hilarious. He's hilarious, but he is intense. And um, obviously, in his first 5 years at Texas Tech, in year three, he goes to the Elite Eight. Or no, in year two, excuse me, year three, he played for the national championship and is already a proven commodity. And said the moment he was hired at Texas, his alma mater, where he was a student manager, student assistant coach under Tom Penders, that he wanted to bring the best players in the world to Texas. And honestly, Taylor, he came to Texas because Texas has the brand to be able to recruit the best players in the world, the Kevin Durant. And they're a Nike school, and
Right.
Texas Tech is an Under Armour school. No one really talks about that, but the Nike AAU teams have more cachet than the Under Armour AAU teams. And so the connections between the shoe companies and players coming up in AAU and where they go to college, all that stuff matters. Chris Beard was ready to come home, and I can't remember a hire that was more universally accepted by the fan base. So yeah, home run hire award to Chris Del Conte for hiring Chris Beard. And you're right, it all started at the McDonald's in Plainview, Texas.
I couldn't remember the city it was in. I knew it was a small town, but I didn't know where. Yeah.
Plainview, just outside of Lubbock. So, all right, our next award. How about this one? Didn't see that coming. The national championship won by the Texas women's tennis team, which featured 5 freshmen in the singles lineup when they took the court at the NCAA championships in Orlando against a Pepperdine team with 4 super seniors. Those are players in their 5th or 6th year because of the COVID red shirt that the NCAA afforded, uh, you know, 2021 athletes. And those freshmen proved to be, I mean, talented beyond their years, poised beyond their years. Lulu Sun, the freshman, clinched the national championship for Texas. Peyton Stearns played number 1 for Texas. Howard Joffe deserves credit as the coach for recruiting all those freshmen, 2 of whom, Taylor, have turned pro after that NCAA championship. But fear not, Howard Joffe has brought in, and you're going to love these names, Bella and Allura Zamarripa, the Zamarripa twins. They've already won 4 professional satellite doubles tournaments and are 2 of the top recruits in the country. Who knows how long Howard Joffe will have them, but they come right into the lineup, and Howard Joffe has got it going. And winning that national championship in women's tennis helped Texas ultimately win the Directors Cup, which is massive because that's for best all-around athletic program. And they broke a 25-year grip on, Stanford's hold on that Directors Cup trophy. So we don't talk about them much, but that Texas women's tennis team and those fabulous 5 freshmen, Taylor, huge, winning the national championship.
Yeah, for sure. Chip is the country club kid here, so I'll let his saying about all of that. But yeah, kudos there, Chip. The sixth one that we have for the 2021 end of the year awards here on the Flagship podcast is this close to playing for a national championship award, which goes out to Texas baseball, making that deep run into the College World Series in Omaha after sweeping their regional and their super regional, both of which that they hosted. Made it through. They were, what was it? Ended up being basically 2 runs and 2 losses away from playing for a College World Series, but still, I mean, the fact that David Pierce, there's a lot of fans at the beginning of last season that were, questioning the direction of the Texas baseball program. Especially after that start to the season when they lost 3 straight against SEC teams in the State Farm College Baseball Showdown. And then talk about a turnaround. I mean, this could have also been a turnaround too, because I mean, I remember members on Horns 24/7 were saying that David Pierce has got to go after this season. And you and I both were like, let's tap the brakes. These are some solid teams that they played. And sure enough, they really do turn it around and make a deep run. So I know there's no such place as second place championship trophies, no way about that. But still, the fact that Texas baseball was able to put together that run should definitely not be overlooked.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. I mean, that walk-off single in the bottom of the ninth by Mississippi State in a winner-take-all, game to get to the championship series against Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State just had it. I mean, Will Bednar, their stud pitcher, just came through in a huge way. But look at the experience that Texas picked up. Young players like Pete Hansen, who arguably, Taylor, was the best pitcher on Texas's team last year from an ERA standpoint, the lefty from California. He's back. Tristan Stevens is back. They lose Ty Madden. They lose some key offense from that baseball run deep in Omaha. Remember, they had to come through the losers bracket after losing to Mississippi State in the opener, had to
Right.
claw and scratch their way through. And, Mike Antico and Cam Williams and Zach Zubia all coming through with big hits and timely offense. But Tanner Witt, Aaron Nixon, young pitchers who got valuable experience and are going to be counted on again this year. Texas, the preseason #1 team, according to Collegiate Baseball. So a lot of excitement from that run in Omaha. And it was, like you said, it was a complete turnaround from when they got wiped out by Mississippi State at the beginning of the season. And Mississippi State goes on to win its first ever baseball national championship, first ever national championship in the school's history. So if you're gonna go down, you go down to the champs. And
Hmm.
David Pierce and that baseball team had an unbelievable run, and a lot of excitement coming into this season as well. All right, Taylor, we'll take a quick break and come back with the rest of our awards. How's that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I may have been off. I think that was number 5. Was that number 5,
Oh, was
not
that
number
number
6?
5? Let's
I think
see
that was.
here.
Yeah, that was number 5. So
Okay,
let's
well
do one
then
more before our break. Yeah.
let's make sure that we give the Return of the GOAT award to men's swim coach Eddie Reese, who wins his 15th national championship. He's in unprecedented waters. He's the best ever to do it. He's 80 years old, and he jumps into the pool with his team. Well, he walked into the pool with his team.
Yeah.
But he told athletic director Chris Del Conte, "Hey, I'm good. I'm walking out on top." And Chris Del Conte said, "Please don't tell me this. Can we keep you on in any form or fashion?" And ultimately, during the summer, Eddie Reese, Del Conte said, "Okay, well, what can we get from you as an emeritus coach?" And he's like, "Well, I'll be there every weekday morning, and you know, I'll be there for home meets. I just don't want to, travel or be there on the weekends." And Del Conte said, "Well, hell, you can either do that for free or you can keep your salary and keep coaching, because that's good enough for me." And so Eddie Reese, still the GOAT and still coaching Texas men's swimming, still with a chance to win a national championship in 22. So huge development for Texas swimming and diving. And Eddie Reese has won national championships in 5 decades, Taylor.
That's insane. That's
44th year.
that is
Um,
absolutely crazy.
Unbelievable. And the
I
guy's
hope okay.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I hope that both of us at some point in our careers, Chip, when we're approaching retirement, that we're so good at our job that we try to retire and they're like, hey, we'll still pay you a salary if you just do part of the work. It's like, I don't know, I've accomplished a lot. So Eddie Reese should probably be all of our role models here on how to effectively do your job to where you get paid for as long as you want. And that's
For sure.
exactly what he's going to be here at Texas. All right.
For
So
sure.
before we get to the second half of our end of the year awards, we're going to take a quick break. But stick around because we've got some really big awards coming up here. We haven't even touched on football season yet. So stay tuned. We will be right back. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on here. The King of the Transfer Portal Award, another award for Texas men's basketball. This one goes to Chris Beard. You know, when he came into the program, mean, he barely had a roster. Let's be honest. I mean, he had what, a couple of players that stuck around from last year's team, and that was pretty much it. He definitely did not have enough to field a complete team, and then he just absolutely crushed it in the transfer portal. You know, we've talked about Chris Beard's success in the transfer portal time and again on the Flagship podcast ever since he took over at Texas, and that extends beyond just what he's done in year one at Texas. That goes back to his prior starts, Texas Tech, and schools even prior to Texas Tech. So, King of the Transfer Portal Award, we kind of in the spring, Chip, I think when they got their like first transfer, I forget which one it was now, but I remember us talking on the Flagship podcast and said, we may need to tap the brakes here, but he's going to be for sure the king of the transfer portal. And here we go. After, not even a full year at Texas, he's landed some really key contributors who you are currently watching play for Texas basketball right now.
Yeah, yeah, he got Timmy Allen, the, all Pac-12, um, forward, who's the leading scorer for the Longhorns right now, and then, added, Devin Askew, the point guard from Kentucky, been a really good defensive player, Trey Mitchell, from UMass, easily their most skilled offensive big man, and Dylan Dizu, the SEC's leading rebounder at Vanderbilt last season, who's just now finally gotten cleared after having off-season knee surgery, and Marcus Carr, who was kind of an icing on the cake, and Christian Bishop from Creighton, who's actually the only player on this Texas roster with an NCAA tournament game, with any NCAA tournament game experience. And that was a big part of the reason Chris Beard, and as you mentioned, he did this at University of Arkansas Little Rock, with junior college players, small college players. He did it at Texas Tech and bringing in transfers who helped him replace four starters from an Elite Eight team and go play for the national championship the following year. And then this year, it was unbelievable. I mean, 6 of the top transfers in the portal all end up at Texas, and we're watching that play out now, and we'll see how they can come together. They lead the nation in defense, points allowed, only allowing 53 points per game. It's going to keep them in every single game until they, develop their rhythm and rotation, especially as they get into conference play. Coaches tend to narrow down their rotation, but Chris Beard he's got such a full roster that we saw this week. Jalen Thompson, a player I really like, 6'7" freshman, get into the transfer portal himself because he wants to play and he wants to play now. It's tough. It's tough to ask for patience, especially in basketball. I mean, part of the reason that Beard has these scholarships or had these scholarships to give is because Jericho Sims, Greg Brown, and um, oh my gosh, the front court from last year was,
Liddell,
well,
Will Baker.
they're all Kai Jones. They're all in the NBA.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't know if you were saying transferred away or
yeah,
anything.
no. So you never know. Kai Jones, no one had Kai Jones being, ready for the NBA at that point. Kind of, you never know. And so you just have to be ready. And Chris Beard, because he's such a relationship guy and keeps those relationships with other coaches, with um, people he's come across through all of his journey in basketball. Because he coached small college, junior college, West Texas, you name it.
Mhm.
He it allows him to quickly bond, develop relationships, and develop trust with players. That's what Timmy Allen and Marcus Carr told me. So I'm gonna trust what they told us. But unbelievable job by Chris Beard and Texas. If they just keep developing, could
Mhm.
be a surprise in March. Remember, Shaka Smart, no NCAA tournament wins in 6 years while he was in Austin. So it's not going to take much for Chris Beard to improve on that, Taylor.
No, not at all. Yeah, I just looked it up. Texas or Chris Beard added 6 of the top 8 rated transfer portal prospects in 2021, according to 24/7 Sports transfer portal ratings. So there you go. 6 of the
Boom.
top 8.
Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, our next award. I mean, keeping up with the times. Keeping up with the times. And that this goes to Chris Del Conte and to all the UT donors for coming through. Obviously, there's been over $600 million in athletic facility upgrades in Chris Del Conte's first 4 years on the job. And in 2021, the south end zone of Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium was completed. And so uh, all these facility upgrades that touched baseball, softball, track, soccer, the new athletic Hall of Fame in the north end zone, which is absolutely gorgeous and so well laid out. And and then of course you've still got some facilities being built. The Moody Center, the $388 million basketball arena that will be open a little later this year, and the new basketball and rowing practice facility, $60 million for that facility, will also be done this year. But huge year in 2021 to get that south end of the football stadium done, Taylor, because remember, the Longhorns were like nomads without a locker room.
Mhm.
In 2020, they were in the visiting locker room that Ed Orgeron was complaining about the air conditioning when LSU came to town. And
Which
so,
it did work. I was in there before the game
yeah,
started, and it was freezing in the tunnel because I was, like, trying to cool off. So
but that was huge, and it's beautiful. I mean, that south end is state of the art. So, um, kudos to you, the UT donors who helped contribute to these incredible facility upgrades. And now Texas is keeping up with the times, Taylor.
yes, and now I think the next step now, Chip, is let the media go through it. We have yet to see any of the south end zone renovations because it was still, they said, technically considered an active construction zone. I don't know how that's the case if you can allow fans in there, but whatever. But I want to see it. I mean, when Texas renovated the locker room back in 2017 after Tom Herman was hired, we never got the tour that they kept promising us. Like literally, like I mean, they said that they were going to reschedule and we had the time set to do the locker room tour, and it got canceled the day of, and it was told to it will be rescheduled. And lo and behold, we have never seen that locker room or the new one yet. So I want to see what this is all about. But no, definitely kudos. I mean, there's no denying that Texas, I think, got kind of behind the times and complacent with a lot of the facility stuff under previous, administration that didn't help. That Texas had so much ups and downs with the athletic director and that role going through, ever since the Lost Dodds left. So Chris Del Conte is a man of his word and a man of action, and that $600 million plus price tag in not just football but facility upgrades, renovations, that's huge for Texas, and it's only going to help them be more competitive in every sport, moving forward, because Texas was way far behind the times, to say the least.
And if
So,
you've been paying attention to Horns 24/7, the insider, we've been telling you that a new indoor football practice facility could be getting constructed um, between the swim center and the rec center south of DKR. That is where the School of Social Work is, and it's it could end up being a more drawn out process. I know Steve Sarkisian would love to have a new practice facility like ASAP, but if they could build it south of the football stadium as opposed to out at Moncrief or Denius Fields,
yeah.
where they have to walk or bus, then maybe they wait. But they're going to be moving some buildings, the business school, which could allow the School of Social Work to move, and a new indoor football practice facility could be constructed close to where you just have a little tunnel to the locker room. So stay tuned. We'll keep you up to date on that, Taylor.
Yep. All right. Our next one, this is my favorite one, I think.
Uh,
This award is for the That's What He Said award, and that goes to our guy Bo Davis for his since now viral rant on the team bus after Texas lost to Iowa State. That was recorded. It should have never seen the light of day, but honestly, Chip, it's funny to me because we don't know the specific motive behind the player. We're not going to out who the player was, but behind the player who did end up, taking that video, and however it got distributed from there, that's who knows. But I feel like it's probably pretty clear that that was recorded not necessarily to be a glowing, example of the coaches, but if anything ever brought the Texas fan base together, especially this past football season, it was Bo Davis ripping those players, because it's like, yeah, let's all agree that's what he said. Everybody agreed with it. No, I mean, there was, unfortunate that it got out. Those type of things should not ever get out. I think that shows that they're still instilling their culture in Texas football. But if that's the type of reaction that these players needed, and that the fans publicly needed to give these coaches some time for them to realize, listen, this is not some type of national championship program that they took over. This is a program that has been really up and down, has had a lot of on off the field scandals, whatever you want to call it, for a while now. And that was the glowing evidence, or the glaring evidence of that. However, the response, I think, was the exact opposite of whoever did eventually leak that video, because I've never seen fans be more like, finally somebody said it, after the, coaches MFing players and telling them to transfer and get the, what off of this bus if you're going to joke around after that, you know, butt beating, I'll say. And yeah, so plus my favorite part of that rant though, Chip, was when Bo Davis said, I just got my bleep kicked. Not y'all just got your bleep kick. He took that full accountability on himself, like he lost that game too. And you need that in coaches, and you need the fiery coaches. And Bo Davis probably secured himself on the Mount Rushmore of some of the assistant coaches to come through Texas that don't get a lot of attention as, say, some of the head coaches or coordinators and whatnot. But Bo Davis definitely gets the That's What He Said award, because that was probably my favorite moment of the football season, if you have to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Davis was out of breath. He was so hot. He could hardly, you know, reload with enough breath to get out just um, how hot he was, and wanted the players to feel that too. And so, yeah, I remember a bunch of our members at Horns 24/7 changing their avatar to Bo Davis um,
Yep.
at that time. So he got the message across, and it resonated with Texas fans. And obviously, wasn't the season that Texas fans wanted, but I think they all have a soft spot in their heart for the defensive line coach at Texas.
Yeah.
That
I think Texas fans have been saying that stuff on message boards, social media, everything for a long time of what Bo Davis said, but they just don't get the chance to scream it in these players' faces. Bo Davis did, and it was needed. It was a necessary rant, and I'm always going to respect Bo Davis for that one, honestly.
yeah, yeah. Um, Taylor, sticking with football, as we mentioned earlier, there were bright spots. And
Mhm.
so we give the tip of the spear award to Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy, and Roshan Johnson. Bijan Robinson, unbelievable start to the season, the 216-yard rushing performance on 35 carries against TCU, where he single-handedly helped run out the clock on a 32-27 victory. And more forced missed tackles according to Pro Football Focus than any other running back in the country, right up until he was injured against Kansas. He does it all. He catches the football, he runs the football, he does it with humility. And Xavier Worthy, good heavens, he broke all the freshman records for receiving, almost broke the single season record of Jordan Shipley. Um, 12 touchdown receptions. Remember at the beginning of the year, he said he wanted to catch 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and everyone was like, "Wow,
Mhm.
we haven't seen numbers like that in a while." And he came up just short of the 1,000 yards, but he certainly over delivered on the touchdown catches. Had the unbelievable game against OU, 261 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Um, just you could tell he loves the game. He gets it. And Roshan Johnson, the all around, he'd do anything. I mean, if they needed him to play
Mhm.
linebacker, he'd play linebacker and probably excel there.
Yeah.
But special teams monster, gives Bijan Robinson a spell in the backfield at running back, can catch the football, and was playing a lot of wildcat at the end of the year. When Casey Thompson and Hudson Card were both dinged in that Kansas State game, Roshan Johnson did whatever he had to do in
Mhm.
that game, and it was an inspiration. And so, um, definite bright spots. The tip of the spear award to Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy, and Roshan Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that Steve Sarkisian has constantly talked about, and obviously I'm not keeping out Xavier Worthy. He's a true freshman, so give him time to develop his leadership there. But Steve Sarkisian all year talked about both the leadership of Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson on and off the field. And they're the type of guys that they do everything right in every single thing that they do, to where they've earned the trust and respect of the locker room, and they need to be the guys that step up. I think Steve Sarkisian would like for them to be a little bit more vocal, or Bijan probably to be a little bit more vocal. But still, I mean, those are the type of workhorses that Texas really has lacked, I would say, in some of the up and down years. And the thing that I always point to, when Steve Sarkisian talks about them being even better human beings than they are football players, which is saying a lot. That's not just coach speak, in my opinion. I mean, I've told the story before on the Flagship podcast about the time I saw Bijan on his electric scooter, and I would have mama bear cousins like, Bijan, I want to kick that over for you because it hurts if you fall on those, and I know that. And the fact that he sat there, he could have just totally brushed me off and just laughed it off and walked away, and I would have thought nothing of it. But he sat there and talked to me for like 10 to 15 minutes about what happened to me, and it's like, he did not need, like, he walked away afterwards, Chip, and I was thinking to myself, like, he did not need to talk to me. He could have just laughed and walked away, and I would have laughed too and been totally fine. But like, that just shows the type of character that he has. You hear the same type of things about Roshan Johnson too. And those are the definition of leaders that Texas really needs. And it'll be exciting, I think, to see the development of the leadership of Xavier Worthy, now that he has a full season of college experience. But the other thing too with that is, look at, that was what Steve Sarkisian picked up, his one technically, high school prospect that he got, I know, is out of the transfer portal, or I don't think he was even in the portal, but he hadn't enrolled yet, at Michigan. And, that in itself goes to show that, what Sark sees in the development and talent of players is legit. It's not just he, is at the right place at the right time in his coaching career. He knows what he's doing. So those three will be really fun to watch, I think, in 2022.
Yeah, yeah, they need to be the tip of the spear for this football team, certainly offensively, as Texas, rebuilds
Hmm.
with all the new players that are going to be coming into the program, Taylor.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. With two more left, the next one we have is the Unsung Hero Award, Chip. And that goes to the Horns with Heart Pancake Factory NIL initiative, which was launched a few weeks prior to the early signing period in December. And that's the initiative we've talked about where every scholarship offensive lineman at Texas will get an annual payment of $50,000 per year that they are on campus and that they are eligible to play. And then, on the flip side, they're going to use them for different various charity initiatives to help out in various communities and other type of, nonprofit type of organizations. But the Unsung Hero Award for this, Chip, is because if this sells itself in recruiting, and look at the offensive line haul that Texas added after the Horns with Heart Pancake Factory NIL initiative was announced and launched. I mean, Texas had what, two offensive line commits before that happened, and then they got some of the top guys on their board following that happening. Not
Yeah,
saying that's the only reason that it happened, but it does not hurt in recruiting, and there's no denying that Texas needs, as what is Tom or Steve Sarkisian called big humans or large humans that he likes to say. They need as many of those as they can get, and this is a good step in the right direction.
yeah. The six UT donors that include Rick Vasquez and Rob Blair, who also were a part of the Burnt Ends NIL initiative for the tight ends at Texas, who um, received $10,000 each of them. Even the walk-on Nathan Hatter got $10,000 in NIL money for coming, doing some podcasts and appearances and that kind of thing. And this is the kind of ingenuity and gray area ingenuity, honestly, that um, it's gonna benefit your school when you got guys who are thinking outside the box, and obviously the Clark Field Collective as well. Nick Shuley, who has organized that with the help of donors and already has involvement from TJ Ford, Kenny Vaccaro, Julianne Fawcett Johnson on the volleyball front. And you're right. I mean, the Pancake Factory was announced on December 5th, just under 2 weeks before signing day. And after that was announced, Kelvin Banks, the number one offensive tackle in the country, signs with Texas. Um, in addition to, Cameron Williams from Duncanville, who had been committed to Oregon, and I just call him NATO. And Agbo. Those are the four-star offensive linemen who also signed with Texas late, and it's huge. I mean, they're still in the hunt for Devin Campbell, arguably the number one interior offensive lineman in the country, who will sign in February. So I'm with you. Unsung Hero Award, Horns with Heart, for launching the Pancake Factory, Taylor. Um,
Yes,
and
no
that
doubt.
and that leads us to our final award of the Flagship podcast in 2021, and that is the Renewed Hope Award for that 2022 signing class that signed in mid-December. Right now, it's a top 5 class. It could go higher. We just mentioned if guys like Devin Campbell decide to sign, and make sure you listen to our man Steve Wiltfong, our Flagship podcast interview for this week, because he talks about how you never know who else could end up in Texas's 2022 signing class. But he does a great job, and we go player by player, position by position, so you get a full, um, analysis of this 2022 signing class. And Taylor, the reason, we've talked about it, Texas has had top 3 classes in the last 5 years, 2 of them, but they weren't stocked on the offensive and defensive lines like these classes. 5 offensive linemen, 8 defensive linemen. This is the kind of stuff that the great programs, they stack classes like this with that many linemen, so that, because remember, Steve Sarkisian said it himself, you're lucky if 50% of your class ends up being a high impact player.
Mhm.
Even in the position groups, you're lucky if 50%. So, 8 of those defensive linemen, you're lucky if 4 become impact defensive linemen for your program. You have to continue to reload, and this was huge. Texas needed a class like this. They need more. They need one in 23 and 24 too. But there is a sense of renewed hope, because I haven't even mentioned Quinn Ewers,
Yeah.
um, who you wrote about, the highest rated recruit since Vince Young is in this class.
Yeah, their highest rated quarterback recruit, according to 24/7 Sports. And, with that perfect rating, like I said, I mean, Vince Young was the last quarterback to get rated 1, and then Quinn Ewers 20 years later. I mean, our guys that cover recruiting, both on the site level plus nationally, they don't throw those ratings out just to anybody because of what it truly does mean. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no denying that there's a new sense, a renewed sense of hope, I think, within the Texas football program. And you said it exactly what I was going to say. This is the year 1 class. You got to go stack year 2, 3, 4, because that's how you really do turn a program around. And you got to get the big guys. You have to. I mean, you win and lose games in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And Texas has struggled, on the offensive line, has struggled to develop offensive linemen, even when they have under prior coaching staffs. When they've signed, higher rated offensive linemen, it seems like they just usually don't pan out. I mean, the only 2 um, offensive linemen drafted since 2000 and what was it, 8, were
8.
both low 3-star, diamond in the rough type of prospects. And so Texas has signed a lot of higher rated ones, but they just didn't pan out. And this is a huge one, and definitely go back and listen to Monday's interview episode of the Flagship podcast with Steve Wiltfong, because he does a position by position, breakdown of or player by player, not even position by position, but player by player breakdown of all that Texas did sign. These guys are constantly, not just going off of highlight tapes, they're constantly watching these players in person, watching them at camps, going to 7-on-7s, talking to the high school coaches, talking to everyone, that they know. And it's definitely a good interview. But this is a good starting point. And the fact that this came after a 5-7 season, imagine if Texas gets to 8 or 9 wins next year. What would that
Hello.
mean? I mean,
Hello.
that's you have to give credit where credit is due. And I know that a lot of Texas fan majority were not pleased with what happened on the field this season. But if this is a sign of what this coaching staff is able to bring and what they're able to sell and then develop them, because they've shown time and again at their prior stops, they knew how to develop players, the majority of these guys, then this is why you have a little bit, give them a little leeway, I guess you could say, to really get their guys in there, because this is a solid starting point, and who knows where this can go from here.
Well, and we would give you all an award. Our audience, our loyal audience, we appreciate you all so much. Um, I mean, what a 2021 it was, and so much to look forward to in 2022, because Texas has made really good hires across the board uh, in the coaching ranks, from Mike White, the softball coach, to Vic Schaefer, we mentioned, the women's tennis coach, um, Edric Florial, the track coach, who's, got that program on the verge. So they don't get talked about a lot. Even the golf programs, men's and women's golf, are positioned well. So It's an exciting time. Texas currently holds the Directors Cup trophy, and that happened in 2021. So thanks to everybody for this look back in our awards, our red carpet awards for the 2021 academic school year, and all the athletics that played out, good, bad, and well, looking ahead. Let's put it that way. Um, so for Taylor Estes, I am Chip Brown. We'll see you over at horns247.com. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, Happy New Year, and stay safe and keep the faith.